Welcome to our distinguished honorary degree recipients and their families, to the families and friends of the graduating classes, and most especially to the graduates. We're all very proud of you. You've worked hard to be here today. You've been good students, good athletes, good citizens of the Tufts community. We hope you will continue to be active as alumni. You're going on to a great diversity of schools and careers. Your teachers have prepared you well, and we expect to be as proud of each of you in the future as we are today. In spite of your varied goals, all of you should continue to do one thing, which is build bridges. These are not the sort of bridges that civil or mechanical engineers learn to build. The bridges I'm speaking about are social and political links between individuals and between societies who must function effectively but peacefully together. At the same time, you will remember that people with whom you may disagree share many aspirations with you, and that bridge building between peoples and institutions is essential to our society if it is to work, and to the world at large if we are to survive. We wish you well in all you do and undertake. We will miss you. Our friendship and confidence goes with you. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the privilege of sharing your commencement. Especially for today's graduates and families, I know that this will always be a day to remember. The culmination of so much hard work and sacrifice, the threshold to so many long-anticipated futures. On a day like today, I assure you that the most graceful thing a speaker can accomplish is to evoke the spirit of the moment and then get out of the way for the real celebration. The first, in fact, is an argument for greater intellectual rigor. It is that ignoring the history, literature, arts, and philosophy of non-Western civilization makes it almost impossible for us to acquire a full understanding of our own. Dawn finds our citizen garbed in pajamas, a garment of East Indian origin, and lying on a bed built on a pattern which originated either in Persia or Asia Minor. Breakfast over, he places on his head a molded piece of felt invented by the nomads of Eastern Asia, and if it looks like rain, he puts on outer shoes of rubber discovered by the ancient Mexicans, and takes an umbrella invented in India. He then sprints for the train, not the sprinting, being an English invention. At the station, he pauses to buy a newspaper, paying for it with coins invented in ancient Lydia. Once on board, he settles back to inhale the fumes of a cigarette invented in Mexico or a cigar invented in Brazil. Meanwhile, he reads the news of the day, imprinted in characters invented by the ancient Semites, by a process invented in Germany and printed on material invented in China. As he scans the latest editorial, pointing out the dire results to our institution of accepting foreign ideas, he will not fail to thank a Hebrew God in an Indo-European language that he is 100% Dewey Decimal System invented by the Greeks, American, from Americus Vespucius, the Italian geographer. So, to all of you who are graduating, warmest congratulations and good luck.
We're all very proud of you. You've worked hard to be here today. You've been good students, good athletes, good citizens of the Tufts community. We hope you will continue to be active as alumni of whatever school you're graduating from today, as well as of the university as a whole. For the first time in the history of Tufts, we have ended up with a majority of honorees who are not United States citizens. 2 Latin Americans, including the Secretary General of the United Nations, 2 Western Europeans, 1 African, 1 Israeli, in all representing 4 continents other than our own. And of the 4 American citizens, 2 are white, 1 was a refugee here, 1 is an Asian American, 1 is an African American. Clearly, our range of role models is broader than it used to be. In spite of the continued prevalence of religious fanaticism throughout many regions of the world and of political relapses such as Panama, we can take this enlarged vision as a sign that the mind of man, too, is changing. We dare hope that Einstein would have approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I am particularly happy to greet the class of 1989 in all the schools and disciplines of this celebrated university. May the quality of your education and the satisfaction of your achievements at the Tufts sustain you in both triumph and adversity through the years ahead. May I also congratulate those who are receiving honorary degrees with me today. It is a privilege and a special honor to share this high distinction with such eminent personalities. Commencement speakers traditionally made much of the notion that the graduates were entering a new world of hope and challenge far beyond anything their elders had known. In recent years, this has become outworn to the point of derision, and wise graduation orators have learned to avoid it. Today, however, the old theme has taken on new life. All over the world, there is now a strong feeling that international relations have turned a corner and that we are entering a new era of cooperation among nations. The people of the world increasingly recognize the limitations of armed strength. There is a widespread new yearning for real measures of disarmament. At the same time, the prestige of nations is increasingly perceived in terms of the justice of their society, their relations with their neighbors, their place in the world economy, and the quality of life they offer to the citizens. At Tufts, you have already made a great contribution to international environmental efforts, especially through your Space Bridge Television Classroom project, which furthers the coordination of academic support in the United States and the USSR for international work on the environment. On this planet now, there are no separated destinies. Thank you very much.
Your time with us has been...
Welcome also to our distinguished honorary degree recipients and their families, to alumni back for reunions, the families and friends of the graduating classes, and most especially to the graduates. We're all very proud of you. You've worked hard to be here today. We've known you as good students, good athletes, and good citizens of the Tufts community. We hope we will have the opportunity to know you better as active alumni of whatever school you're graduating from today, as well as of the university as a whole. As you graduate, you are entering a world that has changed profoundly since you entered Tufts. In many ways, this has been a year of revolution comparable to the worldwide movement in 1848, but with this additional bonus that these revolutions have largely succeeded. It means that all of us, and you in particular, at the beginning of the new age, and many of the reflexes and basic assumptions which have ruled our entire way of looking at the world through a polarized view of the conflict of superpowers is now outmoded. As one of our trustees, Leslie Gelb, who from his editorial post at the New York Times contemplates worldwide affairs on a daily basis, said to me last week, with admittedly a grain of salt, in the past 6 months, all competence in foreign affairs has become largely obsolete. This is said with due respect for the Fletcher School and for the majors in international relations. It means that young people just graduating know almost as much about the political scene as long-time observers, and perhaps have the great advantage over them of viewing the world without long-term prejudices which are very difficult to shake off. In spite of time constraints, I hope you will continue to show, once you are out of this place, the same serious concern that you showed for world problems while you were here. Thank you.
How do we find character for ourselves? And I might add here that in the 19th century, at this university and others across the land, character was a central preoccupation for both teachers and students. How does one learn to be good and thoughtful and considerate? What is enough when it comes to do with character? In my profession in psychoanalysis and in psychiatry, we talk about character disorders. But what is character? Let me tell you about a teacher I met 30 years ago this year. She was a 6-year-old child, and she was going into an elementary school in New Orleans. She'd been sent there by a federal judge to get an education. I watched this little girl go to school, escorted by 75 armed men, federal marshals, because the police in New Orleans would not protect this girl's entry into a school building. And then she told me that having forgot to pray that morning where she should have prayed, she had an arrangement with the federal marshals as to where she said this prayer so that they could then quickly get her into the school building. She decided to stop and say the prayer right in front of those people. I said, well, Ruby, you couldn't let it go until you got into the school building? She said, well, I was praying for them, so I thought I'd pray right in front of them. I said, Ruby, why would you want to pray for them after all the things they say about you? And she said, well, I hear what they say about me, and I might as well pray for them. She said, I always say, please, God, try to forgive those people because they don't know what they're doing. And I asked her, I said, Ruby, why do you say that prayer? And she said, don't you think they need forgiving, those poor people? This Ruby knew. Ruby knew how to put that lesson to test. Don't think there aren't others around like Ruby. All over this country, children who might, like her, help us be a stronger nation and a better nation. Let us reach out to one another. Let us reach out to one another. But most of all, let us love one another, as Auden put it, lest we die as a nation, and lest this planet die with us. Congratulations to all of you on this important occasion in your lives, and I wish you Godspeed.
We're all very proud of you. You've worked hard to be here today. We have known you as good students, good athletes, good citizens of the Tufts community. We hope we will have the opportunity to know you better as active alumni of whatever school you're graduating from today, as well as of the university as a whole. What Tufts will become and will achieve is not dependent on the central government, it's dependent on all of us. And as the people on this platform fade into the sunset, it will be dependent at some point on all of you. Thank you very much.
First of all, I would also like to congratulate everyone here today on this joyous occasion. All the students who did such a great job of making it through a very difficult time with all that homework and so forth. It is tough. I guarantee it's going to get easier now. College is the hardest. And I bring both bad news and good news to you graduates. The bad news is that the world and humanity is in a lot of trouble. The good news is that all the things that are needed for us in this planet to survive, we already have developed in the laboratory and in the classroom. We know what we need to do, and all we have to do during your generation is go out and do the right things and quit doing the wrong things. And this means that your generation will be the one where humanity faces its greatest crisis and its greatest opportunity. You can always change careers, and when you get an opportunity to get into something you can really be proud of that's making a contribution, I can promise you that you'll enjoy your life a lot more if you're doing something that you really feel good about that's helping others as well as yourself. And remember this, like Captain Planet says, the power is yours. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. I declare.
Welcome also to distinguished honorary degree recipients and their families, to alumni back for reunions, the families and friends of the graduating classes, and most especially to the graduates. We're all very proud of you. You've worked hard to be here today. We have known you as good students, good athletes, and good citizens of the Tufts community. We hope we will have the opportunity to know you better as active alumni of whatever school you're graduating from today, as well as of the university as a whole. We're glad we have such a splendid day for your commencement. I'd like to briefly talk about Tufts. A community of scholars, a community of civility, but also a community of shared beliefs. I think we have built those shared beliefs over the year, and I think it's essential that all of us and the university as a whole retain it. Devotion to the prevention of hunger, to negotiations and conflict resolution, to environmental management on a worldwide basis. All of these are important to Tufts and important to the rest of the world. They are expressing the shared values we have and which we want to conserve it. We want to conserve it as we go out from this place. We want this university to conserve it, and they are very much your creation as well as anybody's. Thank you.
A real honor to address you, the class of '92. because perhaps you're the first class in nearly 50 years to have to face squarely up to a set of uncertainties and societal problems. Within our society, and I think it's evident here at Tufts, there is no dearth of scientific or technical knowledge. However, contrary to what a lot of people believe, scientific knowledge and technology per se are very rapidly disseminated throughout the world. Some of our foreign competitors openly and brazenly claim that our society is incapable, indeed unworthy, of competing with them because of the diversity of our culture. To the contrary, the diversity of our people has historically been a major factor in providing the basis of our strength and creativity. As a people, we must take advantage of the complementary contributions to assure that our country can maintain a position of leadership in the future. We must teach our people to compete as a group for the benefit of society rather than to compete with each other. Members of the class of '92, I envy you. You are facing new, exciting, and challenging opportunities, perhaps the most unique in the century. And with all the problems that need to be solved, you have greater opportunities to demonstrate your individual worth, to work together, to have creative ideas, to solve problems, and provide the basis for an ever-increasing quality of life, much more so than many of your predecessor generations have had to face up to. My best wishes for your collective success. Thank you.
He has made it so that...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tufts University's 137th commencement exercises. We welcome faculty and alumni, trustees without whose wisdom, vision, pragmatism, and dedication the university would not be in the place it is today. Welcome also to the parents and family members of the 2,200 graduates who are making the view from this podium this morning such a remarkably scenic one. I am so very, very happy to be part of this Tufts family. I have been warmly welcomed during this past year, and I'm so glad to see that members of the Tufts community from as close a family as I had hoped, and it is really a very special, special place indeed. And it's a pleasure to see all of you assembled together on such a beautiful spring day for such an auspicious occasion. In addition to being very special to me because this is my first commencement at Tufts and this is my first graduating class, this year is of course important in the university's history for many other reasons. It is special, ladies and gentlemen, because 100 years ago today, Henrietta Noble Brown became the first woman to walk across this stage to receive a Tufts degree. And in her honor, 1993 has been designated at Tufts as the Year of the Woman. And it is special also because this year marks the 100th anniversary of our School of Medicine. And the 121st, 5th anniversary of the School of Dental Medicine. And the 60th anniversary of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. These and other components and programs of the university, I believe, create the Tufts philosophy. And the flags that encircle us today, for the very first time at a Tufts commencement, symbolize each of the 110 countries that Tufts students represent from around the entire globe. Tufts, ladies and gentlemen, is truly an international university, a diverse university, a family university. Enjoy the day.
President DiBiagio, trustees, faculty and administrators, and graduates of the class of 1993, and your wonderful patient parents. A todos buenos días y feliz graduación. Y qué mañana más bonita nos tocó. Gracias. Ladies and gentlemen, I wonder who said that history is over. Obviously, he had not seen the faces here today, your faces, for these are the faces of the future. And each and every one of you is going to start writing history today. A new history by a new generation facing new challenges. New challenges, unforeseen challenges. The Cold War is over. That is old. You are new. During 50 years, my generation was captured within simplistic options and ideological smokescreens which hid the variety and wealth of the world's pluralistic cultures. But behind the several curtains, the Iron Curtain to the east, the Cactus Curtain to the south, the Bamboo Curtain in Asia, the curtains of sand and jungle in Africa, and the smiling, self-satisfied, smug TV and toothpaste curtain to the north. Behind all of these curtains, a new agenda was forming, invisible to the eyes of the cold warriors and their higher strategic considerations. This agenda had to do with enormous changes occurring within each society and also on a planetary scale. The survival of the Earth, first of all. An Earth menaced not only by nuclear holocaust, but by our daily crimes of pollution, indifference, selfishness. Then the rights of one half of the human race, women, their right to equal pay for equal work, the right to own their bodies and be free to choose. Their right to be both present and represented in the councils of labor, management, education, and politics. And last but not least, the situation of the majority of the world's inhabitants, the so-called South. 80% of the world's population receiving only 20% of the world's income, where 1 billion human beings, 1/5 of humankind, live in absolute poverty, where each day of our lives, 40,000 children die unnecessary deaths. Blinded by the Cold War, we were distracted from these enormous global problems. We let them drift, and today find ourselves unprepared to deal with them. Governments and political parties in Europe and the United States, and certainly in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, have been left behind by their societies. Society is growing faster than the political or economic capacity for response. and information is promising more than economics or politics can deliver. A global village based on economic integration, instant communications, and swift technological advances faces a local village based on steadfast allegiance to tradition and the culture of memory. Yet the local village, through the images of instant communication, is being offered all the temptations, but none of the realities of the economy of luxury, comfort, and immediate gratification. Like the mythical Tantalus, 3/5 of the world's population are condemned to see but not touch, to salivate but not drink, as they watch the cheerful robot of the Western world on their TV screens amusing himself to death. Are we moving towards a new form of universal apartheid, an economic separation between those who live in the penthouse and those who survive in the gutter? In any case, we are now witnessing the beginnings of a vast wave of migration from south to north and from east to west, the denizens of the local village pounding at the gates of the global village. They are an inevitable response to the challenges of the modern world. If you have global economic integration and instant communications, you will have vast flows of market forces, including labor, and thus instant migration. The immigrants are the bearers of the multiple cultures of humanity, cultures hidden from view for too long, and which now, uncovered, dazed by the light of day, move and at times assert their being in chaotic and violent ways. Having lost the icy moorings of the Cold War, they find themselves adrift, unsheltered, and look for new anchors in their oldest certainties: nationalism, ethnic identity, religious fundamentalism, territorial reivindications, separatism, resurrected animosities. Obviously, all of this is creating a new reality in the world. Call it Bosnia and Somalia today. Call it Pakistan and Armenia tomorrow. Call it Bolivia and the Bronx the day after tomorrow. A reality of dramatic lights and shadows. A new reality, but not a new legality. We have yet to come up with a new or renewed set of laws, treaties, and institutions in order to encourage the creative elements of this unforeseen situation and restrain or condemn its destructive elements. The arrival of southern or eastern immigrants in Western Europe is creating a terrifying backlash: anti-Semitism, anti-Islamism, xenophobia, virulent nationalism, neo-Nazi movements, leading us to wonder, does the death of communism authorize the resurrection of fascism? Are we going to degrade our humanity once more through repeated holocausts? A new legality is demanded, where the general rule of law, establishing rights and duties for both the immigrant and the local citizen, but forbidding racism and xenophobia, is respected and enforced by all. Yet another element of this new legality will have to deal with the rights and duties of the migrant worker and the societies that receive him or her. I am thinking of both a Bill of Rights for the migrant worker and the creation of an international union of migrant workers. Too bad that the great Cesar Chavez is no longer with us to lead it. But we will not have a real global economy without the working men and women who, for many reasons, pull and push factors, market demand, but above all, personal courage, a refusal of determinism. For these and many other reasons, feel compelled to migrate. And it is here in the Americas, in the Western Hemisphere, in this new world of ours, where we should be most active and preoccupied in creating a new legality for a new reality. Our legal tradition is old and rich. Ever since the early colonial period, the laws of Indies the debate of Spain with Spain herself, the acts and thoughts of men such as Bartolomé de las Casas and Francisco de Vitoria created a legality for the Indian in the Western Hemisphere, in the Hispanic Americas, based on the idea of the universality of human rights. And in the Anglo-Americas, a long and difficult struggle to create a legality for the black African community has not ended yet. But North and South, both the history and the legality of blacks and Indians, Hispanics of long standing, and new immigrants from Asia and Latin America is being written and acted anew today. And again, North and South in this continent, we are or should be aware that we are all immigrants in the Americas. From the very first men, we are all immigrants in the Americas, from the very first men and women who crossed over the Bering Straits from Asia 30,000 years ago, down to the worker who crossed from Tijuana to San Diego last night. Without forgetting those illustrious, undocumented migrants, the pilgrims who landed on Plymouth Rock, without green cards or work permits in 1620. Have we not learned in the Americas that when we exclude, we are poor, and when we include, we are rich? Do we not understand in the Americas that cultures perish in isolation and only flourish in contact with other cultures? Of course we do. Of course we do. We are a multiracial and polycultural area of existence. And if we do not recognize our humanity in others, we will not recognize it in ourselves. The relations between North and South in the Americas have been marked, nevertheless, by inequality, the strength of the United States, the weakness of Latin America. We have attempted to overcome this asymmetry of power through a legal framework, limiting the excessive power of the USA and binding us all to principles of economic cooperation, mutual respect, and dedication to diplomatic solutions of our inevitable differences. Manifest destiny and big stick imperialism first, then the negative politics of the Cold War destroyed the legal foundations of the inter-American cooperation. Is it not time to recreate this legality in the new post-Cold War climate, a legality where we can now recognize our common economic interests, the growing identity of our social problems, and both the communality and the diversity of our cultures? Free trade, the free flow of investment, technology, and labor is in everyone's interest, as long as we do not consider the market an end in itself, but as a means to social advancement and a higher quality of life. The market, yes, but not trickle-down illusions. No more voodoo economics, but more and more economic responsibility, not tax and spend, but tax and invest. And not more government or less government, but better government, caring government, social government. More and more, Latin America and the United States recognize each other in the profound crisis of our urban civilizations. Detroit and Lima, Los Angeles and Mexico City, New York City and Rio de Janeiro, Boston and Caracas. More and more we share the burden of drugs, violence, crime, the homeless, health care, AIDS, a crisis in education, deteriorating infrastructures, and loss of expectations. Let us do something together about these things. Let us set an example of legality, adherence to principle, and respect for our greatest asset, which is our human capital. Let the Americas become the very beginning, the head start, the signal towards a global legality capable of dealing with the ecology, human rights, the feminine condition, migration, the rights of minorities, the North-South relationship, and the frictions between a global economy and a balkanized politics. Let us in the Americas spark the new vigor which we must now communicate to international organizations, to international law, to diplomacy and negotiation. We neglected them for 50 years. It is now time to recreate them in the image of new realities. International bodies are as strong and efficient as their members want them to be. They must be strong and efficient if we are to overcome the perils of a new Holocaust, an ecological suicide, or a wholesale denial of our humanity. No one nation, not even the United States, can confront all of these perils by herself. It is time to think and act, not as a lonely world power or super global COP, but all of us together as the superpower Earth. Here at Tufts, where the values of law and diplomacy, of human rights and technology at the service of the community, here at Tufts, where the university deserves its universality, because here civilizations are introduced to each other at the level of both science and the humanities, 110 countries represented here. Here at Tufts, with these young faces, these new generations, we will deny the end of history. We will all begin a new, more human, more generous, more planetary history. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to Tufts University's 138th Commencement Exercises. We welcome the faculty and the alumni. We welcome our trustees, without whose wisdom, vision, pragmatism, and dedication, the university would not be the place that it is today. We welcome the parents and the family members of the 2,100 graduates who are making the view, I must tell you, from this podium today, a very scenic one indeed. It is a pleasure to see all of you assembled together on such a beautiful spring day for such an important occasion. This year, my second commencement at Tufts is very important in the university's history. It is the 100th anniversary of the Department of Music, and 100 years ago, the College of Engineering was founded here at Tufts. The 121 students receiving their degrees from the College of Engineering today, and the first ever from the Tufts Gordon Institute, a new graduate component of that college, are helping mark an important milestone in the history of their school. I want to congratulate all of the graduates on their truly remarkable accomplishments. Commencement marks the bittersweet moment when we all say goodbye to you as students. But I can tell you that you will always be a part of this university. The fact that you are Tufts graduates will be a part of your lives forever. And we will continue to embrace you as members of the Tufts family, even long after you have left us. However, it is our sad duty today to award a degree to someone who is not with us. Cheryl Weingarten of Hewlett Harbor, New York, died in a tragic hiking accident in New Hampshire on May the 1st. A very much loved friend to many of you I know, a member of the Student Senate and a French major, Cheryl received her degree posthumously. Our deepest sympathy goes out to her family and anyone else who has lost a loved one before their time.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what is passing through some of your minds as I begin this commencement address. I say some because I know that there are several of you here this morning nursing such excruciating hangovers that the only thought making the transition from one synapse of your brain to another is let it be over with soon. Please. It will be. Also floating around out there are the inevitable, he's a lot shorter than I thought he was. And then, of course, a few of the, it's got to be his real hair. Nobody who makes his kind of money would buy a rug that cheap. Aren't you embarrassed for being that predictable? As a veteran of these events, both on the delivery and receiving end, let me tell you what's on the minds of my fellow veterans on the faculty. Actually, it bears a striking resemblance to those of you with hangovers. Only since they're faculty members, it's somewhat more elegantly phrased. I am prepared, they are saying to themselves, to indulge your banalities, Koppel, if you will only do so succinctly. To the task at hand, then. This kind of speech generally falls into one of two categories. The first, normally delivered by presidents and lesser political figures, uses the setting, and indeed all of you, as a backdrop. It is an occasion to say something that they want to impart to a larger audience. I get to do that almost every night, so I fall into the second category, which is largely composed of people whose own children have already grown up and who are therefore eager for the opportunity to lecture someone else's. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about optimism and pessimism. The optimist believes in the triumph of hope over expectations, my favorite definition of which is an accordion player with a beeper. Takes a while. I belong to a subcategory of the pessimist species. I am a cynic. It is something of an inevitability among journalists in that many of us were optimists who are converted by a lifetime of observation. It was the pessimistic Jews who fled Germany and Poland and Czechoslovakia in the 1930s. They fled and survived. The optimists remained and perished. Pessimists, anticipating the worst, learned to keep their mouths shut. How many optimists, believing over the past 45 years that they could defeat apartheid in South Africa, were dragged off to prison, and worse. You have to understand it has nothing to do with race or politics or gender, nor is it an ideological kind of thing. You had to be an optimist to belong to Solidarity in Poland during the early 1980s. To believe that you could resist the might of the Soviet Union. You had to be an optimist to be a member of the Viet Cong in South Vietnam during the mid-60s, to believe, as they did, that they could overcome the military and economic power of the United States. Real optimism flies in the face of the facts. It has to be irrational, otherwise it's simply common sense. Pessimists calculate the odds. Optimists believe they can overcome them. This country, our system of government, was based on the irrational assumption of optimists that they could defeat what was then the greatest power in the world, Great Britain. It's easy to identify with optimists of the past. Keep going, Moses, we say. Don't sweat the 40 years in the desert. Don't worry about the dalliance with the golden calf. The children of Israel will make it to the promised land. And to Matthew and Luke and Peter and Paul and the thousands of early Christian martyrs, we are equally encouraging. There will, we tell them with the confidence of hindsight, there will be hundreds of millions who someday will share your belief that Jesus is the Messiah. Our problem is that seen through the prism of history, the optimism of the victorious always looks inevitable. If only each of us could be blessed with that kind of confidence, that fiber of moral certainty now, as we are confronted by our daily trials and tests. We are talking, ultimately, about faith, about a willingness to hang on to something that transcends logic. But it is important for you to remember that even those who are held up to us as paragons of faith and optimism and iron will, even they, and I'm sure Dr. Klaus can testify to this, even they knew despair. That was the essence of what Nikos Kazantzakis was trying to tell us in his brilliant novel, The Last Temptation of Christ. If Christ was not afraid of the cross, if the pain he endured was not to be a mortal's pain, if the temptation to avoid that pain was not genuine, then where was the sacrifice? God, as God, could have avoided all of that. God as man could not. Christ's triumph as a man lay in overcoming his fear. So too in the story of Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his beloved son Isaac. He had to believe that Isaac would die, even as he acted out his faith in God's infinite goodness and mercy. What value could we place on Abraham's faith if he had known all along that God would ultimately provide a substitute sacrifice? Even the greatest among us throughout all of history have been afflicted by doubt and despair. It's a natural part of the human condition. Optimism is the quality that allows us to triumph over despair. It requires courage and a willingness to dare. Dante wrote that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who preserve their neutrality in times of crisis. A perfect definition, I've always thought, of a journalist. I have struggled all my life to maintain objectivity. That is the proper condition for an observer, but not for those who get things done. The paradox you will confront throughout life is that optimists do not always triumph. They are mocked and reviled, imprisoned and killed. But the progress of the human race ultimately depends upon those who are willing to put hope above expectations. Those who believe that there is a cure for AIDS, that we can overcome racism, that war is not the inevitable extension of unsuccessful diplomacy. I don't know how farmers keep going in the face of flooding one year, drought and blight the next. The ones who keep going must be incurable optimists, and because they are, we eat. You are educated men and women, the product of a great university, but as you all know, that is no guarantor of confidence. You know how difficult it will be to land a good job, to keep it, and to flourish. You know what the odds are against having a successful marriage that will last. You know that we live in a world of shrinking resources and rising expectations. And when all is said and done, intelligence alone is not what will save us. Intelligence fueled by hope and faith and courage is what will save us. A willingness to believe in something beyond ourselves, and yes, I do mean some infinite power that infuses our existence with a meaning that transcends the simple span of our lives. If we do not believe in that, then there is no reason to build for a future, no reason to build churches or synagogues or mosques, no reason to teach values to children, no reason to plant trees, no reason to fight intolerance against anyone other than ourselves. Jackie Kennedy's death the other evening prompted Americans of my generation to reflect on what it was that made so many of us, when we were your age, put such faith in Jack Kennedy when he was president. He was not the most ethical or moral or even the most industrious of men, but he gave us hope. He made us believe in dreams, in sending a man to the moon, in traveling ourselves to other parts of this world as members of a Peace Corps. He celebrated culture and knowledge and art. He handled himself with grace and wit. Who knows how we would have judged Jack Kennedy if he had lived and finished his term or terms in office, but for all his failings, and they were considerable, he infused us with optimism, and for that we could forgive him a great many sins. This country needs some optimism again, some hope. We need some adventurers, some planners, farmers, builders. We need to put some of our cynicism aside, and I'm telling you this not because of who I am, but in spite of who I am. Later this week, I'll go back to my work, focusing on the daily aberrations and conflicts, wars and disasters, and the occasional triumphs and modest successes that constitute the nation's diet of news and gossip. It's what I do. It's what I've always wanted to do, and I have no regrets. It's an important building block of our system. But we are like the dog who night after night bathes at the rising moon and gradually comes to believe that it's his barking which causes the moon to rise. There are two forms of disaster which can overtake a nation. One is silence, when all the voices of the observers and commentators, analysts and critics have been stilled. The other is chaos, when everyone is babbling at the same time, when the doers and the builders find themselves paralyzed by an excess of critical comment. We are approaching that dangerous point. Our challenge is to come back from the brink without moving too far in the direction of silence. It is our challenge, yours and mine, to accept democracy's daring proposition that self-control works, to dare to believe that the future can be better than the past, that even among our self-centered generation, there have been optimists who planted seeds so that you could reap the harvest, and that encouraged by their example, even more of you will do the same for your children. Life is not easy, but you must dare to hope.